overcome. The Philippines will remain a committed partner in all of these cooperative efforts. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Philippines. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Namibia.
Peaceful, just, and equitable resolution of the question of Palestine is achieved. Namely, a two-state solution with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security with internationally recognized borders. It goes without saying that the recognition of the state of Palestine by the growing number of UN member states is testimony to the international community's resolve to uphold justice and the right to self-determination. Madam President, Namibia also stands before this Assembly today deeply concerned by the devastating economic and humanitarian toll of the Israeli occupation on the Palestinian people. These decades-long and ongoing restrictions of movement, trade, and access to resources imposed on Palestinians have not only led to significant humanitarian challenges, but have also systematically inflicted severe economic costs that continue to hinder the prospects of peace and stability in the region. Palestine's economy has been described as one of the most severely constrained in the world, with growth stifled by closures, checkpoints, and blockade of Gaza, eroding the foundations of the viable and sustainable Palestinian economy. The blockade in place since 2007 has confined over 2 million people to a narrow strip of land, cutting them off from the outside world and reducing the flow of essential goods to little more than basic humanitarian supplies. This situation has resulted in widespread unemployment, food insecurity, and the collapse of a productive sectors that could otherwise sustain the livelihoods and foster resilience. In this regard, Namibia calls on all member states to hold accountable those who violate international law and to support initiatives aimed at ending the occupation. Since October 2023, the situation has deteriorated dramatically. We have all witnessed how escalating military operations and tightened restrictions by the occupying power have reduced Gaza's infrastructure to rubble. Homes, schools, hospitals, and water systems lie in ruins, leaving entire communities displaced and dependent on scarce aid. Livelihoods have collapsed as Palestinian workers are barred from employment in Israel and the West Bank, while farmlands and industrial facilities are destroyed. The humanitarian crisis has deepened, with severe shortages of food, medicine, and fuel, pushing Gaza to the brink of famine. Namibia views these actions as violations of international law and of the principles enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. The occupation and its associated measures are not temporary or incidental. They are systematic and deliberate, designed to weaken the Palestinian economy and perpetuate dependency. This assembly must recognize that the economic devastation inflicted upon Palestine is inseparable from the broader struggle for justice and peace. Without addressing the economic dimensions of the occupation, there can be no meaningful path towards a just and lasting resolution. Madam President, Namibia also particularly alarmed by Israel's continued practice of withholding Palestinian tax revenues, which are collected on behalf of the Palestinian Authority under existing regimes. We condemn these practices in the strongest terms. Tax revenues constitute a critical lifeline for the Palestinian economy, just like for any country in this hall. Funding salaries, public services, and essential social programs. Their arbitrary suspension and diversion exacerbates the fiscal crisis of the Palestinian Authority, undermining governance and deepens humanitarian suffering. Such measures are not only punitive, but also unlawful, violating the agreements under which they were collected, and further destabilizing an already fragile situation. Namibia calls on Israel to cease this practice immediately and to release all withheld revenues without condition. Beyond the tragic loss of life, the destruction of productive assets and the restrictions have erased decades of development gains in Palestine. The cumulative effect of these measures is not only economic strangulation, but also deliberate denial of the Palestinian people's rights to self-determination and sustainable development. Namibia, therefore, calls upon member states to support urgent humanitarian and reconstruction assistance to address the destruction since October 2023, and to reaffirm the Palestinian people's right to sovereignty, development, and dignity. We believe that the path to peace lies in ending the occupation, restoring justice, and enabling Palestinians to build a future free from dependency and despair. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Namibia. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Maldives.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Madam President. All protocols observed. The question of Palestine has been on the UN's agenda for over 77 years. The last 2 years alone has seen over 70,000 Palestinian deaths, over 154,000 injured, a vast majority of these figures women and children. This must not continue. Ceasefire is not peace. Peace must not be conditional. The global consensus is clear. Israel is in clear violation of international humanitarian and human rights laws and the UN Security Council resolutions on Palestine. Despite the overwhelming evidence of its continued aggression, occupation, and annexation, Israel continues to avoid accountability and responsibility. Impunity must end. The ICJ, in its advisory opinion, is clear. Israel's policies and practices in the occupied Palestinian territories constitute an obstruction to the exercise of Palestinian people of their right to self-determination. The court also found that Israel is under an obligation to provide full reparation for the damage caused by its internationally wrongful acts to all natural or legal persons concerned, including returning the land seized since 1967. Justice delayed is justice denied. For over 77 years, the Palestinian people in the West Bank and East Jerusalem in Gaza have been denied justice. This must not continue. Israel must withdraw its forces from Gaza, stop the indiscriminate attacks against its civilian population and infrastructure, allow unhindered access for humanitarian aid and assistance into Gaza, and stop the illegal settlements and attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Those are the first steps toward peace. The high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution and its historic New York Declaration was an undeniable show of support for the recognition of the state of Palestine. Let us be clear. The state of Palestine exists. There is no question about this. From Gaza